Hi everyone, this is James Nussbaumer, and I've started this video series on my interpretation of A Course in Miracles. Actually, the way I would like to say it, or prefer to say it, is the Holy Spirit speaking through my body and how it's interpreted in my earthly manner. For those of you who know me, know my story, but I've been getting tremendous comments on Facebook, and even just as many tremendous tweets and notifications on Twitter, and comments on my YouTube, people just asking me, hey, would you explain this section of the Course? And so I'm going to keep going at that, and I encourage you all to go ahead, shoot me a tweet, shoot me a message on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook. Just look up James Nussbaumer, and the same thing on Twitter. So I thought that I would take these responses and put together a series, a video series to explain. And Mary Ellen, who I had mentioned in my last video, wanted to know more, and so I promised her that I would. And she's from southern Texas near the Mexican border, and she wanted me to explain early on in chapter 1 my interpretation of that based on stories that I put together, which are contained in both of my books. The first one, The Master of Everything, a story of mankind in the world of illusion we call life, and its sequel that is just now being released, Mastering Your Own Spiritual Freedom. Both are published by Ozark Mountain Publishing Company and are on sale everywhere books are sold. I hope you'll pick up a copy of each one of these books. But for now, I want to take you through, starting in section 4 of chapter 1 of the text. Excuse me. The escape from darkness, and then go on page 11, 13, and around page 14, just an interpretation I put together based on experiences that I had in my fall, and this is a bit of how I entered prison. For those of you that know me, was sentenced to 10 years in prison for a foolish securities violation as a financial advisor, where I had spent 25 years in that industry. And that is where I ran into A Course in Miracles. But that's another video and another story, which is contained in both of my books. But so this, the escape from darkness and how emptiness is engendered by fear, but can be replaced by forgiveness, and we want the illusion of needs, and that the mind really does serve spirit, and the mind that serves spirit is invulnerable. So I want to start, and here's my raggedy old book. For those at the previous video, you'll be able to find how I stumbled into this old copy of A Course in Miracles. But how this story goes is that I had resided in the county jail back in 2007 for 2 months due to my inability to find bail money. And this is where I would remain until being bussed off to prison after I had pled guilty. I had already been escorted on at least a dozen round trips to the courthouse for various hearings, and not a very lovely trip at all, being bound by shackles, a belly chain, and handcuffs, along with a van full of others. You would think they were holding me for murder or some other type of severe offense, but this is the norm for all felony cases, regardless of their nature. A prisoner is a prisoner. This particular trip seemed to be a much shorter van ride compared with my other court appearances. My guess is that I no longer felt any use for time, nor would I have to live any longer with the person I'd so desperately been trying to be for so many years. I didn't know who I was now, but I didn't care either. To the public, I was just another convicted felon. My career is finished, as well as my life. I would repeatedly scold myself and hammer into me, and I would mumble to myself while chained to the inside of the van on those rides back and forth from the courthouse to the jail. On this day before Christmas Eve, I had not yet been sentenced, but taking my lawyer's advice, I had pled guilty to charges of forgery and theft that would send me to prison. I thought it was very odd, though, that there was no plea bargain, that my lawyer did not arrange. My attorney insisted that I just trust him. Once back at the jail, I noticed the young female deputy who unlocked the leg irons from my swollen ankles was about the same age as my 21-year-old daughter, Megan. While the young deputy escorted me down a long corridor leading to my cell, I briefly recalled my own headstrong 20s, but I'd never gotten into the kind of trouble, though, that I was in now. The deputy apologized, and I was pleasant and she was as pleasant as could be as she gestured for me to enter the tiny cell where I would remain for at least 30 days. I still was to be sentenced yet, which would mean one more trip to the courthouse and back, and I was told that due to prison overcrowding that I would have to wait for a prison bed. And during that time period, a pre-sentence investigation would be performed, which would weigh heavily on the judge's decision as to how much prison time I would receive. I was also told that my sentence should be determined by my ability to pay fines, just like in the old Western cowboy movies you may watch. Excuse me again. When a judge would say, that'll be 30 days or $30. It's up to you. Well, in my case, I was broke, and if this scenario were true, I was in hot water. The jail cell was only 6 feet wide, with a concrete bench about a foot from the floor that held a torn, thin foam mattress, or what was left of one, we could say. But a little thin little mattress like that. The steel bars and concrete surrounding me or had me securely imprisoned. And being dressed in the rags they call an orange jumpsuit, I certainly was not going anywhere. There was a small window positioned near the top of the high block walls towards the ceiling. And that window reminded me of the window in the fruit cellar of the basement in my grandparents' old house when I was growing up, and we'd play hide and seek and hide in the fruit cellar. I found that by lying on the floor and positioning my body against the wall of that cell, I could look up and through the window to see the sky. Although it was night, though, my hopes were to try anything, however slightly, just to strap on to some sort of sanity because I was just so low and miserable. But my depression told me there was nothing to see out that window anyway. And the numbness that I felt only added to the very confused void that held me. The jail cell was cold, and darkness was the view through the window, just as my depressed thinking said it would be. But I noticed a hint of the glow from a nearby moon. The noise around me and up and down the long corridor of cells was horrendous, louder than a crowd in a sold-out arena. But my numbness almost managed to block it out as I half-heartedly thought of ways to end my life. A reoccurring thought that haunted me was, how can I live with myself? Then suddenly I became aware of what an odd thought that really was. Am I one being or am I two? Who am I? If I can't live with myself, then there must be two of me. There must be the I and the self that I cannot live with, but maybe only one of them is real, but how do I know which one? My supper of beans and rice on a plastic tray was slid into the cell through a slot in the bars at floor level. I left it untouched on the floor until lights out, when I awoke from a brief nap to clammy darkness. The guard came by to nab the food tray. Well, at least I thought she did come by to grab the food tray. The moon had changed positions and was now squarely framed in the tiny window, which my eyes grabbed onto. I now had a companion, the moon in all its light, and it remained in the window for what seemed to be a few hours. Even after it moved its position, its glow was still apparent, with a backsplash of stars filling the sky. I remembered the calming, peaceful sight as I lay on the floor against the wall to gain the only available view. With my body still numb, that sky seemed very friendly. My mind would vacillate between thinking and no thinking, or the I and the self that I was trying to figure out. My no thinking was merely a fixed gaze through the window and into the sky, nothing more. The thinking part of me continued its questions, how to live with myself. This side of me was getting weaker and more frightened as I began to recognize that there was nowhere as a body that I could go or hide. The more I remained on the no thinking side, the less fear that I felt. Then I remembered a thought or a willingness I had to never feel the need to hide anything. It said to me, let go of whatever held me to those habitual thinking types of scolding and things I was doing to myself that had consumed me for so long. I began having more thoughts telling me that although I was heading off to prison now, that there was nothing to be afraid of. But still there were sustaining fears and self-pity I could not get a grip on, such as, why is this happening to me? And what is going to become of me? As I continued to focus through the window, an additional brand new thought came clear through my mind. It said, nothing you see from this jail cell means anything. It was my thought, my own for sure, but I did hear it, but I heard it as though it was talking to me, but it was not verbally, just pure thought. Or maybe I can say it was thinking for me, is the best maybe I can describe. This one thought persistently hounded me through my numbness. My eyes opened widely as I suddenly realized the window in the prison cell was gone. It had simply vanished, along with the cell, the bars, the concrete floor, walls and bench. The entire building was gone. There was nothing, only me, now sitting up in an Indian-style position, arms positioned, crossed over my knees and over my legs. I was still staring at the moon and stars, and even noticed how calm I was and yet amazed. Next, the darkness of the sky faded quickly away. No sky, but oddly all its glory remained and had merged together, and I felt held by it. The stars had gathered into dense groups like clusters and attached themselves to the outer edges of the moon. Now the moon was centered in an endless array of sparkling clusters, lighting up my view of the magnificent sight that welcomed me. I looked down at my feet and legs as I was sitting there Indian style, and they were gone. I raised my hands and arms, and they were gone. And since I had no hands to feel my face, I was convinced it no longer existed either. My entire body was gone, but I was still there. I existed, feeling a sensation all around me as the most peaceful I've ever experienced. I thought to myself, how can I feel and see all this beauty and the light without having eyes to see with? Another sensation or thought entered my mind that said, it's okay, relax, you are already being taken care of. Plans are being made, things and events are being arranged at this very moment, getting things ready for you. You're going to do well. Next came a thought that told me all my errors were not real at all, so I shouldn't need to worry. That at that very moment, from many places, forgiveness was shining on me. It also said to let go. The emptiness and numbness were gone, along with everything else that had faded. It faded away completely. I've heard and read about people who've heard voices talking to them, and for example, people who say, God spoke to me. You know, we hear that all the time. However, with me, like I had already said, this was really not the case. It was just pure thought rather than a voice. So pure a thought that there was no doubting or questioning it whatsoever. So real that it is just unexplainable, but is certain. Not for sure, but just certain. It was a thought with no thinking. I said to myself, so this is what everything is all about. I am real regardless of my body. I went on to consider that this is what the Bible really means by there is no death, and why Jesus demonstrated there really is no death. I had always felt deep down that I was fooling myself or allowing the world to fool me. Now I was able to see how I had deprived myself by allowing my mind to buy into this fire and hell concept and the devil below. There is no such thing. Next, all of a sudden, the moon and stars grew so bright with light that my eyes blurred, watery with tears. As I raised my hands to wipe them, I realized everything had reappeared, as if nothing has ever happened. I was sitting there cross-legged, Indian style, with all my body parts, and inside the jail, everything came back. What I had experienced was not a dream. It was real. However so brief, though, maybe just an instant. Time seemed to have suspended itself, so it didn't matter how long the experience lasted. I looked up to see the food tray was still there. The guard had not picked it up like I thought that she did. You yourself, as well as others, have had similar type of experiences, perhaps only to quickly dismiss them as a daydream or your imagination running away. Who knows how real your own experiences might have been, the ones that you've had similar to what I've just explained. One thing for sure that we do know, though, is that the world is always at our side, vigilant and ready to quickly dismiss them as fantasy or delusion. I hope this makes sense, everyone, and if you'd like to know more about my books and how you can obtain a copy, by the way, they are on sale everywhere books are sold, but if you want to read up on my website and more about me and see some of my blogs, and you can click on the link below to jamesnussbaumer.com and it will take you there. Thanks for listening to me, and I hope this was beneficial. I'm encouraging you to comment me through Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, or at my website. Feel free to go to the contact area, the contact page, and shoot me out an email. Thank you again.